research shows that Africa leads in the way in the highest numbers of women entrepreneurs globally, many continue to face challenges in accessing venture capitals than their male counterparts, who secured 96% of all funds raised in 2022. Today, we ask the question, why? Now, ladies, the statistics we continue to see and hear are that women still struggle to secure loans and grants to start or grow their businesses, even though their small businesses are the ones sustaining the informal economy throughout the continent. What do you hear in your views and in your coverage are the voices of women saying is the reason? Lily, let's start with you.
Yeah, in my view, and of course in the coverage experience I've had, many women say that it's mostly the cultural and the societal barriers that need to be addressed in the financial system in order for women to, thrive and in setting up their businesses.
Ariel, I think the first discussion I had with you, the first thing I said was women supporting women.
That's right, that's true.
And it's something that I've heard recurring on my shows. People want to see more female philanthropists, more female, more women who are in government, pushing forward initiatives to help support people.
I agree.
So that's one thing that they would definitely like to see.
We have like women bankers.
So lucky women in the financial institutions.
Oh, that's right. Incubators made by women.
Yes, and more networking opportunities for women to pull other women. When you look at most developing countries, things like sororities, you find that women stick together. I think it would be beneficial if we had something like that.
I agree with that, but also, policy makers, women who are in the policy making, decision making, they are very important also to push women.
I agree. I agree precisely. Well, the African Development Bank maintains that women-owned businesses in Africa face financing gap of about $42 billion. With women entrepreneurs facing many challenges in their efforts to secure funding, the ADF created a mechanism to work with financial institutions to give incentives for lending to women in businesses. AFAWA, Affirmative Financing Action for Women in Africa. AFAWA and similar regional funding mechanism asserts that the women struggling to secure financing in the formal sector is a major barrier, such as limited collateral and lack of credit history. These elements are very needed in securing funding in the formal economy. On this week's episode of Our Voices, we examined why African women on the continent and in the diaspora continue to experience these hardships in order to start their businesses. We will speak to experts on what venues and strategies they can employ to start their businesses, and they're already running businesses forward.
We begin in Nigeria, where experts there point to the driving factors behind the discrepancy in women venture capital and call for interventions. Emeka Gibson has this report from Abuja.
Kafilat Ayeni is the CEO of Binkaf Place, a one-stop shop for organic products in Nigeria capital city, Abuja. She says her spices and coconut products are sought after across Africa, Europe, and the United Arab Emirates.
And we've been able to sell so well in the US, and we'll be able to sell so well in the UK. And we're also working with other people in Gambia. We have our products in Kenya. We do very well in South Africa on our coconut flakes. And we also sell our coconut flakes very well in Dubai.
Despite her business success, she says she still have trouble getting loans from the local banks.
I want to deliver this product, I want to deliver these goods, but I can't meet up to this demand because I'm financially constrained. I have a feeling that if it's a man that is requesting for this and has all it takes and he comes to see the business that he's running, and they will be looking at risk.
Ayeni says that women are risk takers and that she worried they are seen as liability and left out of financial opportunity. But our concern isn't isolated. The African Development Bank reported an estimated 42 billion gender financing gap across the continent. That means women-led businesses isn't getting the same access to loans and financing as men. Obinaya Orongpa, a Nigerian economist, is urging the government to focus on women-friendly policies.
The government should deliberately, in her budgeting process, put in place policies that recognize the female gender.
Melissa Adeshina, the Abuja Zonal Head of Taj Bank, says the financing gender gap might be a cultural falling rather than the fault of the banks.
We don't have any financing for women different from men. We give the same conditions. There's no gender-specific condition for the financing we give. And
according to data from the business incubator firm Faith Foundation, women make up 43% of entrepreneurs in Nigeria. Experts says while capital is vital, female entrepreneurs will also have to upscale their business structure, accounting metrics, and profitability to succeed. They recommend that the government also ramp up support for female entrepreneurs in those areas to make their businesses appeal to investors. Gibson Emeka for VOA News, Abuja, Nigeria.
Thank you, Emeka, for that report. Now, in this year's Women Deliver Conference on Space Solidarity and Solutions, held from July 17 to 20 in Rwanda, thousands of people attended online and in person. Those who attended the four-day conference focused in advancing gender equality and reaffirming who leads. In attendance was corporate lawyer turned entrepreneur Monica Musonda. She is the CEO and founder of Java Foods. It's a Zambian-based food processing company and was one of the presenters at this year's conference. She spoke to our colleague Carol van Dam Fogg and gave an on-the-ground perspective on the challenges women face in securing funds, as well as some solutions from the Kigali, Rwanda. Let's hear what she had to say.
In an industry which is not used to seeing women running a business, coming up with a business idea, putting a team together and growing a business. Manufacturing all across the continent is really dominated by multinationals or by men, simply put. So I was a bit unusual, and oftentimes people didn't take you seriously. So access to market was very difficult. A lot of people figured that I wouldn't be around, so why waste your time on me? I didn't really know what I was doing, and sometimes they were right. I mean, very early on, you were still feeling the ground and trying to figure out how to get product to market, how to price it. But I'm no different from a man who started out the business, right? But I think definitely the critical aspects were that at the time, although I was a qualified lawyer with many, many years of experience, people weren't willing to bank on this new business in a new sector, in an area which they were used to seeing other people. So raising finance was very difficult for me. I had to use personal money, my savings to grow the business. I had to actually even mortgage a personal asset in order for me to access further money. Had to use a lot of innovative to actually see how I could get more money, to convince people how to actually invest in me. And it took a few years. I actually think it took a lot longer than it should have to actually grow the business because it was just that much harder.
Well, you're obviously a success story, but what do you hope to do to help other women achieve the kinds of things that you have already been able to do?
So actually, I do a lot of things, and I think it's great platforms like this to speak to you about what I've done, but also going to conferences like We Deliver, but also being a part of what we call AFAWA, which is under the African Development Bank, which is a group of women entrepreneurs and ambassadors who are now speaking using our voice and their platform to tell women across the continent our journeys to come together to discuss innovative ideas. Because today, actually, we cannot say you shouldn't finance women-run businesses because they have been actually successful, but we should be speaking more about how to de-risk them, which sectors we should be focusing on, and really using our voices as guidance to say, look, maybe you should be thinking about this in a different way, or can we have more technical support, things of that nature. So I think I've really tried to be much more focused on building networks with other women entrepreneurs, supporting them where I can, and also building networks with bigger institutions like AFAWA through the African Development Bank.
Since you've started your company, have you seen things get better for women trying to start their own companies?
What I've seen is a lot of women really jumping on the bandwagon, right? I think women want to be successful entrepreneurs. And what we're seeing now is the shift from being micro businesses, women who are running their businesses after 5, after they've worked in the back of their homes, and now women saying that actually maybe I should take the leap I should actually rent that small office. I should actually hire that extra person, and really taking it seriously because they can now. Because now people are seeing a lot more women run businesses being much more successful, and are looking to finance them. And looking to support them. So lots of great initiatives on the continent around women focused PE or venture capital, which is very helpful. We need a lot more of that. A lot of focused technical assistance as well. Again, very helpful. And now women saying, yes, I'm here. I will take this up. And I think that's a great thing. I think before you were probably seeing a very few numbers, but now there's no shortage of people that can be helped and supported.
I think Monica Musonda touched on a lot of really important points on securing funds for women who want to start a business. But one thing that I want to point out is access to funding because of lack of trust for women from banking and financial sectors. They don't trust women.
Yeah, especially someone who's a professional, who is a lawyer, who you would think that maybe rural women who don't have the credit history or maybe collateral and things like that, you would think that maybe they'll be discriminated against. But a professional who is a lawyer who has a lot of networks.
And good reputation,
so it's
still not gaining trust.
Sometimes, I'm just going to be the devil's advocate here. Sometimes it's not always just about whether or not you trust that particular person. It may be the business that just doesn't convince you as a banker to give out a loan.
But why would the same kind of business be trusted if a man presents it and be denied if a woman
she made that
presents
point.
it?
Perhaps it's just the way that it's presented. It's very possible.
And that's what
I'm not saying that
but
women
I
are not
agree
discriminated
partially.
against. I'm just saying that a lot of times, be it with gender inequality, be it with racism, I think people tend to look at reasons why. If you're insecure in whatever it is that you are, in your gender, in your race, you tend to jump on that. Not saying it doesn't exist. I'm just saying.
But this
maybe
is where
we take a closer
I
look
agree.
at it.
This is where incubators come in, where women need to be incubated. Their business need to be incubated, or their business they need to be trained maybe before. Not to say that she needed training, but they need to be trained before presenting their projects to banks, so that they can be really.
So exactly, the reason why I disagree with this is women, if they come with, with a proper professional background, they need to be trusted enough, just the way men are. That's.
Yes. And then I think that, when we talk about the statistics, it does show that women are still being discriminated regardless. The numbers are, the proportion is very, very high. So,
but what is the metric of those statistics? What metric is being used to measure those particular
who
statistics?
have been bankable and who haven't been bankable? They can look at the genders of people who've been bankable. So I think.
But to your point, I think the networking and the startup, the incubators, that's when they become handy in helping women secure funding.
Well, we're going to discuss a lot more of this when we come back. We're going to take a quick break. It's now time for that break. When we return, we'll meet here in studio Shelly Omilade of Bell Black Girl Venture, a woman on a mission to fund 100,000 Black-owned women businesses. Before that, we ask you to share your tips on what business sectors do you believe women should venture into more. Share your tips on our social media platforms at VOA Africa. We are here also on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Use our hashtag VOA Our Voices. We're also on WhatsApp. Our number is US country code +1 202 503 9025. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Times of change, when the world seems uncertain and what we hear doesn't reflect what we see. We seek the truth. When we are told only part of the story, we lose trust. In moments of crisis, our dreams, hopes, and wishes for a better tomorrow depend on a free press. At Voice of America, we bring you the stories that people take risks to see. We connect the world and unite it with truth. At Voice of America, we show you the whole picture.
Health, wellness, sport, beauty, medical breakthroughs. Healthy Living cares about your well-being. What are the main health concerns in Africa and around the world? Find out the latest on coronavirus. Connect with our experts and ask them questions.
How long does the virus stay?
Join me, Linoch Mudu, in Washington, every week on Healthy Living, right here on VOA.
You're watching VOA's Red Carpet. My name is Jackson Vunganyi. Thank you so much for joining us each week right here on Red Carpet. We bring you the latest in
Welcome back. You're watching Our Voices. We are discussing how women of African descent can become more bankable and thrive in the realm of business. Meet Shelley Omiladi Bell, a system disruptor and business strategist, an entrepreneur and computer scientist. She is the host of A Dose of Disruption podcast. She helps Fortune 500 companies, entrepreneurs, and executives turn great ideas into disruptive strategies to increase revenue. Omi is an influencer for Black Girl Ventures in the African American community here in the US. She is here to help us understand some of what is needed for Black women to thrive in business. For Black women to thrive in the business realm here in the US and in the diaspora. Ms. Shelley Omiladi Bell, it's a pleasure to welcome you on Our Voices here. We're so happy to have you. You look so beautiful.
Oh, thank you. So do all of you. I'm excited to be here.
You make business look bright. I can't wait to hear what you have to say. I have been following you. I saw a few of your podcasts. I know you had Lacrae there. You had so many interesting people on your podcast, but glad to have you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk about this topic.
Mm-hmm. Now, you have definitely been very passionate to help the African American community here in the U.S., and you've also traveled in Africa to help women there strategize on different things. Do you think that women in general are not doing what they need to do to get where they need to be, or this journey that you're on to help 100,000 women, explain to us a little bit about your strategies into getting there?
Yeah, great questions. One, women are not the problem. Okay, so because business is business, there's gonna be levels, there's gonna be times when you as a person, a human, are either gonna be getting it right or not right, or getting better at it. And so I think that a lot of times when we talk about this topic, it's like, how can we fix the women? How can the women get better? And it's like, wait a minute, patriarchy is a large part of this problem, and it also affects women across the board. And it's historical. So I think the thing about it is it's not surface level. It's so historical that it's embedded in so many of the processes and so many of the way the finance world works, which doesn't take into account like so much of what we dealt with, whether it is being colonized or whether it is racism or discrimination or things like that. And so now we're kind of trying to push ourselves out of that, hopefully, in different ways. On our journey at Black Girl Ventures to serve 100,000 women, it's related to how can we get them access to funding? How can we get them access to training? How can we get them access to each other? I heard you talking a little bit about that. And in my journeys on the continent, I realized there's not a lot of intercontinental travel. And so when you talk about women helping women and trying to find each other, it's a huge challenge to build your network.
I like what you said about how these challenges are embedded in some of our societal, cultural experiences. Before we move further into the discussion, let's hear what some people in Zambia, what they have to say about their strategies in going to business. First, we have Miriam Ruth Muto, Maureen Sakala in Your Voice segment. Then we'll come back to hear your take on that.
I'm a graphic designer, and the kind of business that I run is where I offer graphic designing services, where I design social media flyers for people. I also design printables like maybe business cards and banners and other materials upon request. The way I started my business was through savings. So it was just whatever I would earn, I put it aside. And then once it amounted to what I needed for my business to get started, that was when I launched my business.
I run a business called My Perfect Stitch. It's a textile and furniture manufacturing business where we specialize in the manufacturing of bags and make custom-made furniture and interior design. When it comes to funding, it's been different types of funding that we have received, especially for My Perfect Stitch. So we have managed to get access to loans from different banks. We have managed to get angel investment. We also use our own personal money to grow the business.
I'm an entrepreneur. I'm running a mentoring for children, girl child specifically, and a cosmetic business. Okay, so I want to speak about myself. For me precisely, I worked for 6 months. I was saving every month. I saved up a little something towards the business. That was from January up to about June, July. Then I started running my business in September. That is after setting up and being able to tell people through word of mouth. And in terms of advertising, marketing my business, that is, I use social media. That is Facebook most of the time, WhatsApp, and mostly word of mouth.
So what we heard from this woman is that they mostly use their own saving to start their business. So what do you say about using personal saving to start a sustainable business? Is that going to be thriving? Like, which one is advisable?
Well, traditionally, that is the case. And in the world of finance, if you're going to get investment, they want to see that you have invested in yourself first. Investors want to fund you to grow, not to go. So your first set of funding is going to be funding that you put in. And there's multiple ways to do this. There's crowdfunding in some ways. Now, across the continent, regulations-wise, it's not allowed for you to do crowdfunding in a legal way. So I can't advise that across the continent. You have to really check in with what's happening locally and what the politics may be around that. But what we call family and friends round, which is going to your family and friends and saying, hey, I'm going to start this business. Could you help me? And then investing in that way is one way that people start. Another way is just taking your money from your companies, which a lot of these women seem to do, from your job and saving up. But that is normal. Now, is it long-term sustainable? Mm-hmm. No. Mm-hmm. You want to, at some point, either your revenue has a turnover where you're gaining more revenue, or you want to get investment or loans or grants.
Definitely. So, Omi, you really want to see women of color excel. And because of this, you have a book here called Originate, Motivate, Innovate, right? The 7 Steps to Building a $1 Billion Network. Tell us a bit more about this book and what women can learn from it to move their business forward.
I wrote the book because I realized that I was the only one of me, and so a lot of the conversation that you've had today has been about, men and women and trying to function in this way together, right, to grow businesses, or the ways that men are getting funded and women are not. There's so many times when I was entering the room and I'm either the only woman, the only person of color, the only black woman. And a lot of times people tell you to grow your network, but when you get into rooms where you're the only one, it's hard to stay there. It's hard to feel comfortable there. And so I wrote the book so that people could get access to what I learned and the ways that I learned to stay in those rooms and continue to push forward, even when it was uncomfortable. And even when I was feeling like, oh, I don't know about this. Do they want me here? Am I welcomed here? Is this discrimination? Is it racism? Is it sexism?
Wow. So there's definitely a lot of tips that we can draw from there. Now, do you really believe, Omi, that together as women we can really push forward and make it without the male-dominated institutions that you talked about in the the patriotic system that's there? You think together we can do it?
It's a good question because it feels like it's the only way we're going to do it. right? On top of just maybe like the times changing and people getting older and maybe moving out, more women get into politics. You know, I think that like when power changes over, we feel more empowered. And so when there's more women in power, we'll have more women starting businesses and feeling more powerful within themselves. So I think we can't miss that as a factor. But it seems like networking is the way that finance works. And so if more of us can share in our stories, hey, here's how I do it. Here's how I do it where I am. Here's how I do it where I am. You can kind of skip some steps, I think.
So how strong are those networking opportunities? How thriving are they? How strong are they? And how much have they helped so far?
Yeah, you just came back from Africa and you went to 2 countries. How was that?
I did. So I learned a lot in terms of, in this particular trip. So I had done work in Lagos before, but this time I was in Nairobi. And it was women from multiple countries having a conversation. And so it was interesting to find out that there's not a lot of intercontinental travel and that airlines are like more expensive trying to go from some of the countries to the other countries. So those networking opportunities can be halted. There's only, as big as Africa is, there's only about 650 tech hubs, accelerators, incubators. There has to be more. So there's not enough gathering opportunities for you.
I mean, I think we've done okay as women. When you look at this patriarchy that we always talk about, which first of all, the definition of patriarchy is a system where a community operates where a man is the head of the family and responsible for people in the family. It's a biblical term, so it's not necessarily a bad thing. But this million-year patriarchy that we're talking about, I mean, considering we only broke it down maybe 100, 200 years ago, I think we've done pretty well. But what can you say about that?
I think that's interesting because I literally looked up patriarchy before I walked over here, and it's actually not as simple as you just mentioned it, but there is
It's morphed into so many different things over the years.
Yeah, it's more about the dominance and the leadership and women being excluded.
All right.
So when men leading the family, great, love that. But like excluding women from things.
That's true, right. Thank you so much, Omi. Thank you so much for being with us. This is our show for today. Our time is very short, but thank you for being with us on this episode. We want to thank all our guests, our guest Omi for being here, Omi Bay. And catch up the next episode of Our Voices and go to our website, voaafrica.com. We want to thank our guests for joining us today once again. And from Kigali, Rwanda, our former corporate lawyer, Monica Musonda, who also chimed into the show today. Thank you so much.